Hi, this is Anna, and this is Check It at the Round Table, where we discuss movies, books, music, and stuff. Today, we are discussing Bad Buddy, the series, and why Pat and Pran shouldn't have probably broken up. This is a recording that I've done after thinking about it for a couple of days. We've had the premiere of episode 11 of Bad Buddy. And I don't mean weird, I percolate for a couple of days. And I don't know about the rest of the viewers, but I think we all were very disheartened by the end of episode 11 of Bad Buddy. And I've seen many comments by people saying, Pat and Pram breaking up was a selfless act of love for one another. And I don't know why, but that really didn't set well with On. And I sat there and I was going, why is this not set well with me? And it took me a couple of, and not that anyone's saying anything wrong by saying that, because it is an act of supreme selfishness to give up something that you love in order to please someone else. But I think the thing that really bothered me about episode 11 wasn't really the fact that Pat and Pran gave each other up, so to speak. It was the fact that they gave each other up for the reasons that they gave each other up. And my hair's a little weird. I don't know what went wrong with my hair today, so I put on my mango wig, and that's what I'm going with because it was a disaster. So anyway, I'm like, some days it's worth the battle, other days it's not. So today I'm wearing my mango wig. I ordered it from Asia. It's really cool, but it looks a little different than my real hair. And I still have a horn at the top. I still can't figure that one out when I'm recording. It doesn't usually show up in the YouTube video, so that's good. But anyway, I think the thing that after percolating for a few days and having time to process Bad Buddy episode 11, that really ended up coming to the forefront is Pat and Pran gave themselves up for their parents because their parents couldn't forgive one another. Because of the fact that the parents couldn't forgive one another, they hated the children of the other person. And baseless hatred of any sort, whether we're talking about baseless hatred of a people group, baseless hatred of a person, is something that is really unconscionable. It's like one of the worst forms of violence is hating someone simply on the basis of who their parent might be, what ethnic group they belong to. Baseless hatred is terrible. And the fact that Pat and Pran gave up their relationship for the baseless hatred of their parents toward Pran or toward Pat, vice versa, was not a good decision. I mean, I totally get that they wanted to keep their families intact. I totally get that they didn't want to have to go through life without their mom or without their dad. I totally get that. But I also totally get that giving in to their mom or their dad on the fact that Pat's dad wouldn't apologize to Pran's mother for something he did and knew that he screwed up on. And therefore he hated Pran because Pran reminded him of the fact that he had made that mistake 20 years ago. And Pat acquiescing to that and basically giving into that and saying, it's okay if you decide to hate Pran because you screwed up 20 years ago and won't admit it to his mother. That was wrong on so many different levels. I think that's why episode 11 left me really upset internally, not like angsty, but just sitting there going, I totally get if people have to break up for a good reason. I mean, there are many good reasons why people have to break up. If someone cheats on you, that's a good reason to break up. Sometimes they can work it out, but sometimes not. If someone, decides that for whatever reason, the relationship is no longer viable, that makes sense. But to break up on the basis of our parents hate one another and that baseless hatred has been passed on to us and we must propitiate this baseless hatred, that's a really bad reason to break up. And I think that Pat and Pran broke up with the best of intentions. They're trying to keep the peace within their family, but there is some peace that is not worth keeping. And peace regarding baseless hatred is not worth keeping. I mean, and granted, I'm sitting there going, I totally get that their relationship might not have worked out for whatever reason. But I also totally get that the reasons that they broke up, as noble as their intentions were not good enough reasons, because what they did was propitiate, I'm probably saying that wrong, that hatred that their parents had. They were acquiescing to hatred based on nothing viable, hatred based on the fact that two other people screwed up years ago and wouldn't admit to that screw up, and so therefore they wanted their children to carry on that hatred. And to me, that is uber depressing. I mean, that is like, I mean, there's a lot of things that I was like, that's bad in the world. But Pat and Pran's relationship aside, I mean, whether they stayed together as a couple or not is really kind of, to Anna, irrelevant. What matters is the fact that you would make a decision based on people who are propitiating hatred, and that decision will in turn propitiate that hatred. I mean, honestly, if Pat and Pran had decided, we're going to go back to Bangkok, we're going to finish our degrees, we might have to get a job to pay for those degrees because our parents might not support us. But even if they didn't stay together as a couple, I don't think acquiescing to their parents was a good plan. And it's not because I am against honoring your parents. I think, honoring the people that you came from is very, very important. But if the people that you came from do something to the level that Pat and Pran's parents did in hating someone, I mean, the fact in episode 10 that Pat's father literally pushed Pran to the ground simply because of who his mother was, that is inexcusable. I mean, everything else aside, I mean, when I saw that scene, I was like, to me, that kind of ended it for Pat's dad. I'm like, I totally get people can redeem themselves. I totally get that. But the fact that you would literally shove someone to the ground because of who their mother was, and because it was actually your fault in the first place, and you didn't want to admit that 20 some years later, really is bad. And the other question to ask is, what will Pat and Pran gain by acquiescing to their parents? Did they really gain the peace that they wanted? I mean, yes, I'm sure Pat got to go run the family business. And yes, I'm sure Pran probably became the interior designer he wanted to be. But at the end of the day, did it really bring either of them peace? Did it really bring either of them joy? I mean, no offense, but Pat and Pran's parents would have found something else to fight about, something else to cause conflict with. And I think sometimes when people are just bent on conflict, you do have to sit there and go, it's not really worth it to continue this relationship if those people are going to just constantly be looking for a fight. And I totally get there are conflicts in life and you have to resolve certain conflicts. I'm like, you can't just let certain things sit. But to sit there for literally years in a stew of conflict and to choose to continue in that pattern is very, very dangerous. And I think the saddest thing to me about this whole series was the fact, not that Pat and Pran broke up. I mean, no offense. I'm like, whether they stay together or not, that's kind of to the side. I mean, yes, they're a great couple. Yes, they surmount every difficulty except this final one together. It is quite amazing. I mean, whether you're a liker of BL drama or just regular drama, I'm like, I really haven't seen a couple like this in a drama in a long while. I think the only other couple that comes to mind is Tudor and Fighter in, I can't think of the name of the BL. It was really stupid. I don't mean it bad to anyone who likes the BL. I'm just saying it was a weird BL and it was stupid and it was just kind of strange. What was it called? I can't think of it. But for those of you who know BL drama, you know the one I'm talking about with Tudor and Fighter. But anyway, that's going to bug me. I don't know the name of that drama anymore. But anyway, it was not very memorable, except I really did like how in that drama, the one couple, if there was a problem, they talked about it. They dealt with it together. I mean, they were what we call Johnny on the spot for one another if there was an issue. And in the same way, I think the thing that makes Bad Buddies so unique is, yes, we have a relationship. Yes, that relationship has many facets, romantical, otherwise, etc. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble thinking of words right now. But the main thing I think that's interesting about Bad Buddy is you have a couple who they are on the same page. They know where the other party has been. They also are willing to sit there and go, I am going to be here for this person for the very reason that we are together as a couple. And that means that we are going to support one another because we know what it's like not to be supported. But at the end of the day, it's like they lost sight of their most valuable asset was being able to face things together. I think the most weird conundrum in this whole episode 11 was sitting there watching Pat tell Pran, I love that you're there whenever I face a problem. And then they switch almost like less than 3 minutes later to them breaking up. And I'm going, what happened to I'm always glad you're there whenever there's a problem because something, got lost. And then we have the whole part of, one man can't change the world, but one man can be changed. And I'm like, Pat and Pran going back to their parents didn't change the world, and they certainly didn't change themselves if they're acquiescing to that kind of baseless hatred. And there's a really unique lecture series. I will drop a link in the description if you want to check it out. But it's by Rabbi David Furman of Aleph Beta. And whether you're Jewish or not, it's fascinating. But it's basically about what baseless hatred, little by little, will do. Whether we're talking about in present day with all the issues regarding racial conflict, or whether we're talking about, back in World War II with the Holocaust. Baseless hatred has always had a problem. And I think that is why I find it so disturbing to see it in any form. It's not because, there are other problems that this world has, but to hate someone simply based on where they come from, who their family might be, etc., is one of the worst crimes because you're judging that person by things that are absolutely beyond their control. I mean, seriously, it makes no sense logically. And I think that's why at the end of this episode, Hannah was saying they're going, logically, this doesn't make sense. I totally get that Pat and Pran wanted to please their parents, but I also totally get by pleasing those parents, they were acquiescing to a horrible truth for those poets. Was that truth correct? No. Was it the truth that those parents lived by? Yes. We're going to hate someone simply based on where they come from, based on the fact that we screwed up and don't want to admit it. So we're going to hate them. And I think the thing that I found most disturbing was that, and also the fact that there were a lot of comments where they were like, well, they had to make up with their parents because, they couldn't have not. And I'm like, there's always a third way, as they say in Once Upon a Time. It's not always, stay together, don't talk to your parents, break up, talk to the parents. I mean, I don't know what the third way would have been, but I think a third way would have been better. And even if Pat and Pran decided to break up, that is a totally separate matter from sitting there and basically saying, I broke up to please you because I'm acquiescing to your hatred of people. That is just not setting well after a couple of days. It's like, I'm sitting there with Bad Buddy and I'm like, I really hope that they kind of pull this up, because to me, it's not really about parental honor. It's about parental failure. Yes, but it's also about the fact that, I mean, this is not about respecting your parents. This is kind of taking it to a whole nother level where we're sitting there going, if we respect the parents, we're going to hate this group. If we don't respect the parents, we're going to maybe have really good lives and live our lives without conflict. I mean, that's kind of a perk. I mean, no offense here. And, I think this is also kind of interesting because in my own family, when I was a child, there was one side who literally wouldn't talk to my parents because they would not hate a certain people group. And I think that's one of the reasons why, for me, this kind of hits home, because it's like, and honestly, people were like, when I was growing up, like, don't you feel deprived? And I remember being a very small child, and I don't mean word, I really haven't changed much since I was a child, and sitting there going, it was either we don't talk to my grandfather or I don't get to be with my cousins because they are of that ethnicity. So, there's really no question here. I'm not going to be with one person at the expense of like literally 5 to 6 other people. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me then, and it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me now. And honestly, the people that suffer the most from that kind of hatred are the ones who perpetuate it. I mean, the grandfather on that side, he never got to meet me. He never got to meet my amazing cousins. I mean, think of what he lost in his life because he was sitting there going, I hate a certain people group. And that's not to disrespect that grandfather because he had many other fine attributes, I've been told. I don't know because I didn't know him. But the thing is I honestly really didn't feel deprived because I knew what that would cost if I was a part of that relationship. And I remember being quite small and sitting there going, it's not worth it to sit there and dislike a certain ethnicity simply to please this person who has convinced themselves they want to hate this group. So anyway, I knew that was a long time ago now. But anyway, I still think, that's, I think, what really got to me at BetBuddy. It's like, I've seen all these comments, all these posts about, they're just trying to respect their parents. But I think it's more than that. I think, yes, you can respect people, but that doesn't mean that you acquiesce to them in certain instances. I mean, Pat and Pran, no matter what they did, would try to respect the memory of their parents. It's the same way that I try to respect the memory of that grandparent. But that kind of looks different depending on different circumstances. And that is my review of why Pat and Pran should not have broken up. And I'm sorry about my hair, but some days are good, some days are bad, and some days you just put on the mango wig because it works. But anyway, that is my review. Check it at the round table. Also, I will drop a link to that lecture series if you want to check it out. It's absolutely amazing. You should definitely try it. Check it. Bye.